Hello,
Hi,
everyone.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. Today, we're talking about hybrid teams. Over the last 2 years, we have seen such a mass experiment where there was a massive increase in digital communication and a big change in the way teams worked and collaborated with each other. So, right now, many companies are going through yet another shift, a
Yeah,
transition back to the office. And in many cases, that involves maybe potentially going to a hybrid work model and making that the topic of hybrid work model more and more popular as the companies are trying to answer questions, create structures, and make this an equitable and effective arrangement. So today we will talk about some of the challenges of hybrid work as well as potential solutions that you may consider. And this
Mhm.
is also a place to ask questions and share insights from your experience, because chances are, if you have questions and if you have challenges or insights, other people are going through the similar challenges and experiences. So please share them with us and stay tuned. But as usual, before we dive into the content, I want to introduce my co-host and co-creator of our new employee development program, W Squared Work and Wellness Amplified, Lydia Di Francesco. Lydia Di Francesco is a wellness expert, speaker, and author who has worked in the wellness industry for over 10 years. She has an MBA and she's currently in process to become a certified workplace health and performance practitioner. Lydia is a weekly radio host of a wellness segment and is a regular TV guest expert. And she has an energy and a passion for helping people see that there are simple ways to make healthy living your lifestyle. She's an inspiration to me. I learn from her every day.
Oh, thank
And
you.
and each video, we share one new fact about each other. So today's fun fact is that Lydia volunteers with Italian Week Ottawa and has been one of the main organizers of their annual festival for over 3 years.
Yeah, it's been a lot of work, but I've actually learned a lot. And it's one of those examples of the fact that you can really get a lot of volunteer experiences. So I always encourage people to have some kind of volunteer thing that they've got going on. But yes, now it's my turn to introduce you. So Alina Spiderskaia is a leadership coach, speaker, and facilitator. She holds a degree in psychology from McGill University, and she's the creator of a successful program called Empowered to Lead. Alina draws from her 10 plus years of career in the corporate world to help organizations become better places to work by turning managers into leaders and tapping into innate employee strengths to create a culture of passion and full engagement. And I love these fun facts that we're sharing. And today's fun fact about Alina is that she has twin daughters who are all grown up and are about to go to university, which is so exciting. My niece is off to college in September. It's so crazy, right? You blink and it just, these things just happen, right? So, also my sisters are twins. So that's a second fun fact, a
Wow.
little bonus fact about me. But yeah, no, I'm so excited about this conversation. I literally can't go on LinkedIn any day of the week and not see some post about hybrid workplaces.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I see some comments and hellos. Hi back, and please say hello and tell us where you're from. That's always encouraging for us, and it just keeps our energy up. Like I mentioned, transitioning to hybrid work is, and like you, Lydia, like Lydia just mentioned, it's on top of mind there, and it's on the top of my feed and probably your feed as well. And Lydia, I know that you talk to a lot of HR professionals and business owners as well as employees as well, and what are some of the questions or themes that you see come up again and again in this area?
Yeah, I think really honestly, one of the most common themes that I'm seeing and hearing is about flexibility, right?
Mhm.
Employers want the option to choose the best way for them to work. So it might mean fully remote, it might mean a mix of remote or in person, so the hybrid, or maybe it's fully remote. Now, I
Mhm.
will say that in some cases, there may be a need for employees to work in person, for example, in places where a client or a customer is coming to that business or a place of work. Obviously, you need employees there. That just makes sense. But I really think gone are the days where employees can have a blanket policy on this issue for the entire organization. And I want to give a really relevant example. So I was recently chatting with a friend who works for a university in Ontario. And obviously, the university wants students back on campus. Students want to be back on campus. And when they're there, they need to interact with staff in person. So it makes sense for those particular employees to need to be at work in person, right? Common sense. However, there are many jobs at the university where the employee does not need to interact with students. So, should they be forced to go back to work in person? Personally, I don't think so. And really clearly many employees don't think so either, because I've actually heard about a lot of employees, in particular at this one university, that they're quitting because they want the choice and the flexibility. And I think it's important to understand that there's two underlying concepts regarding flexibility. It's not just flexibility on its own, but there's the fact that this conveys trust in your employee, right? You're trusting them, first of all, that they're working remotely. I mean, obviously, we've been doing it for the past 2 years, so we're shitting on it. But also, you're trusting that they're making the best choice for themselves in deciding how they want to work, right? And when we signal trust, that goes a really long way as an employer and as a leader. And the other piece is wellness, of course. I have to talk about wellness. I can't tell you how happy I am about how much wellness and mental health have been brought to the forefront of conversations in the workplace. For many people, they've realized that it's their health and their family that are the most important. And allowing employees the flexibility in how and where they work is actually a piece of the wellness puzzle. You're empowering the employee to make these decisions where they're likely taking their wellness into consideration. And I'm over here going, yes, finally, like I've got a big smile on my face. I'm so happy about all this stuff. Now, on the flip side, remote or hybrid work is not all rainbows and unicorns, right? We know that there are some challenges when it comes to transitioning perhaps into more of a hybrid work. And especially for managers, if they're managing a hybrid team, right? So some might be in person, some might be both, some might be remote only, right? It's this mix. So what would be, from your perspective, some of the challenges that you see when it comes to managers leading these teams and transitioning into this type of work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. There's on one hand, there's so much flexibility and there's so much positive and there's so many benefits of having hybrid work arrangements, having that flexibility built in. But it's not, like you said, it's not all unicorns, it's not all
No.
I'm sure, as usual. And that's why we're here. So there are a few challenges that are worth talking about, I think. And the first one, and you hear about this all the time, is the proximity bias. After working remotely for a while, some people, like you mentioned, really missed being in the office, and some realized that they're actually way more productive at home. They have a better time. So this means that given the flexibility, some employees will naturally gravitate to working from home more than others. Just it's a personality, it's preferences, also your family situations, etc. Unfortunately, that may lead to an intentional and unconscious exclusion of remote staff. So due to human nature, we're all humans. Managers are more likely, or at least they believe they are more likely, to understand the performance of employees they can actually physically see. And this leads to biases in having more knowledge to share about a worker when it comes to performance reviews or career planning, especially, and this is very important, when managers themselves primarily work from the office. And research in MIT shows that remote workers may end up getting lower performance evaluations, smaller raises, and fewer promotions than people in the office, simply because they're not seen. If I don't see it, I can't really can judge.
Well, I mean, that's the bias that the managers would have.
Exactly. Yeah. And another challenge is that because of the nature of communication within person and remote employees often get unequal access to information. Because information sharing is often unplanned, and employees who are physically in the office typically have a real advantage when it comes to information. They tend to get more of it, and they tend to get it earlier, which can result in information hierarchy. So imagine the situation, right? We, as a team, we have a great meeting where everyone joins remotely because we want to be fair to everyone. We have excellent guided discussions, everyone participate, and we finish the meeting with everyone on the same page. Fantastic. So far, so good. Well, then an hour later, Dana from the department has an idea that pops into her head, and she discusses it with her colleague next to her, right? Or, for example, maybe a VP comes over to say that the client, that he just got off the call with the client, and the client is requesting an adjustment to the project, right? So now we're having all sorts of discussions that our remote employees have no idea about. they're still thinking we're fully aligned, and unless and we're good to go. But unless we create clear ground rules around equal and consistent information sharing, we're going to have a problem, right? And then naturally, these communication challenges have a negative impact on collaboration, and many teams do report decreased collaboration since going remote. And now that we're moving to hybrid teams, it will continue to be a challenge, especially if people in the office physically come together for the meetings and remote employees join by video call, right? When you have people in the actual room together, with some employees joining remotely, and sometimes it's even without video, maybe it's just an audio that they're joining, right? So to people in the same room will naturally dominate the conversation, because it's just not possible to have parallel discussions with the technology that we have right now, right? When we have, if you've ever experienced this, if people are in the room and you're joining remotely, the sound coming all jumbled up from the speakers, you can't really, you just not process the same way. So this may limit the influence and opportunities for remote employees to shine, and may even create them versus us mindset, right? And all of these issues create a sense of unfairness. And when employees don't feel a sense of fairness, they withdraw or leave. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and given that the work focuses, that your work is focuses on wellness, and you mentioned that it's really something that you're really passionate about, and mental health within organizations it's an issue. We talked about it earlier. So do you see any challenges in this particular areas as a result of transitioning to hybrid work?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The first thing that comes to my mind is that it's not a new challenge for the remote part of the hybrid
Mhm.
aspect, which is that work and home happen at the same location. So sometimes work takes over and the employees end up working more than they would if they're at their office, right? And part of this is due to not embracing the work life integration that we've previously talked about. So if you missed that talk, we do have a replay. You can definitely find it on both of our LinkedIn's and on our channels. But the essence is that work and life are intertwined, right? Sometimes work crosses into traditional home time. Sometimes personal stuff happens during traditional work hours. We embrace this. We love this. It's great. The issue comes when the work increases and the personal time is less and less existent, right? So we also talk about the difference between work-life integration and work balance. So it's not we're looking for a pure balance in time on each, but you want to make sure when you're looking at your life at a macro level, that you have the amount of personal time that you're looking for, and that work isn't necessarily just taking over because you happen to be working at home, or there's more
Mhm.
complications if you're doing at home and in person. And I'm sure there's additional challenges in terms of time management with that, right? The other potential challenge in the transition to hybrid work relates to social wellness. So we have different dimensions of wellness. It's not just all physical wellness or mental wellness. There's something called social wellness, which refers to the relationships that we have and how we interact with others, right? And everyone's definition of their own healthy level of social wellness is different. And these
Mhm.
differences are highlighted even more between extroverts and introverts, right? There's been a lot of talk about how, especially at the very beginning of the pandemic days, introverts were loving the remote work and it was great. And we may now see some transition of introverts coming back into the office, and they may not love that so much, right? And extroverts might end up being overly chatty, and then people's social wellness isn't what they want it to be, right? So there's some key areas of what you want to think about in this area. So one is to be aware of your own needs and desires. Number two, be cognizant that not everyone is the same as you. And number three is really having open communication between you and your staff, and encourage open communication between you and your colleagues. And what I mean by this is it's even simply a matter of, if someone is talking to you too much, or interacting with you in a way that doesn't work as well for you, let them know. Like, you can do it in a gentle way. It doesn't have to be in a harsh, mean way, but have a conversation. And you can just, for example, like, when I'm working and if I have my headphones on, like I'm in the zone and I really need to focus, and unless it's important, please don't interrupt me or send me a message in this manner, whether it's a text or an email or whatever, right? Again, I feel like we talk about communication all the time, but it's so important. And I think when we can communicate better between ourselves, and again, it comes down to also the understanding our own needs, we can have a better sense of that social wellness within the workplace, no matter whether you're working in person, remote, or hybrid. So we talk about some of the challenges, but you know me, Alina, I am all about taking action. So let's chat about solutions. So what are some ways that companies can address the challenges that you just talked about a few minutes ago?
Fantastic. And there's a few things that actually you just mentioned that really resonated with me. First of all, the concept of social wellness and us, all of us having that unique level that we require. I really, really appreciated that. And also some of the specific things that we can do in terms of communicating some, the boundaries and really making sure that our needs are met. I actually saw a picture. It was a funny picture. Somebody was sitting with the headphones, and on the back of the chair it says, "I'm trying to focus on doing some important work. So I would love to chat with you a little, like, but can we do it a later time or something like this?" And
Yeah.
something as simple like that it's polite, but at the same time, you have to learn to have those boundaries, because now we realize just sometimes
Mm-hmm.
time is lost by interruptions when we are in the office versus when we're at home. So now that we have this
Mm-hmm.
learning, we actually need to do
Mm-hmm.
something about it. And
Yeah,
sometimes
and I mean, yeah, like, don't get me wrong, I'm an extrovert, so I'm all for chatting, but I think it's a matter of the communication piece is just the most important piece about that.
absolutely, absolutely. And there
Mhm.
are ways to do it in a way that's acceptable, that is polite, and that really is compassionate. So I really think
Mhm.
that we need to embrace that more. And
Mhm.
we talked about some of the challenges of transitioning to hybrid work. That includes lack of perceived fairness, right? We talked about unequal access to information and effective collaboration. So I really want to address that. And one of the way to even out the playing field, so to speak, is to adopt a remote first mindset as a gold standard, so that everyone has an opportunity to contribute their ideas. When one person is remote, everyone is remote. So that's what it means. And workflows and communication structures need to support equal access regardless of where the person is located. So that may include keeping real-time meetings, physical meetings to a minimum, and when they happen, recording them for other people to view, allowing that for asynchronous participation, right? It's about focusing on making decisions online and not at happy hours, or not in
Mhm.
gathering in the office, right? It's about measuring performance by output rather than hours worked, and making
Yes,
community.
please.
Exactly, right. So making community asynchronous first. So it's really shifting. There is a mindset shift that needs to happen. Another
Mhm.
important mindset shift that companies need to make is to recognize and reduce proximity bias that we talked about. We need to keep in mind
Mhm.
that leaders have a lot of influence on what happens at work. We talked about leading by example all the time. So if the leadership team is always in the office, this sends a very powerful signal to everyone that being in the office is better, because, well, my
Mm.
leader is doing this all the time. So it communicates the unspoken rules of expectations. Well, if the person is always there, it means that I need to be there as well. So that means that some employees may feel pressure to come back into the office to get that precious face time with their bosses as a way to get more recognition, because they recognize that they may be at the disadvantage. So
Mm.
some companies just decided to go fully remote to address that. But of course, it's not a possibility for everyone. You mentioned that some companies you just can't go fully remote. So then we need to proactively address that. So, and one of the ways is to encourage companies to encourage leaders of the companies to spend more time outside of the office to create a more level playing field. And for example, I read this article where at Quora, employees who work in the office are required to take their meetings on video. So then everybody joins remotely, and none of the leadership team members are located in the office. So that
Oh,
again, that creates the unspoken rules that it's okay to work from home.
that's so interesting. Wow. I think the idea of remote first, even if as a company you are in person, I think that's so different and something that most employees, most businesses are not thinking about. But, I think part of it is the past 2 years, almost everybody has been fixated, not me, but everybody has been fixated on the returning to normal thing. But
Mhm.
here's the thing, normal wasn't working great. Like, let's really be honest about that. And secondly, that ship sailed like a long time ago. The world of work has changed and businesses need to like get with the new program here. I think even like you said, in terms of, about the communication, making decisions, have it being online and stuff like that. I mean, I think the reality is, yes, there will be some decision making that happens in person, like the examples that you mentioned. But I think the key thing, like you said, is that then there's a process in place. Okay, so what happens if there's a change in the decision, or,
Mhm.
Dana and Steve had a chat and now all of a sudden something's shifted? Well, I think then it's a matter of, okay, we need to let everybody know ASAP, right?
Mhm.
However, that method of communication is, whether it's a Slack channel or an email or another meeting, right? That needs to be part of the whole process. The other thing is, we need to keep in mind that we're not going to get it right the first time. It's going to take times, trial and error. I really think that companies need to adopt this experimenter mindset, right? Where they're trying new things, getting feedback, course correcting. We are all really, honestly, most of businesses out there are brand new to this idea of hybrid. There are some businesses who have been doing it for a really long time. Most haven't, right? So you're not going to get it right the first time. As a leader, you're not going to get it right the first time, or maybe the second time. But as long as you learn from what's going on, talk to your team, create new processes as you go, and also think of your processes and your policies not as like written in stone, but as something that's like a draft, where you may not even ever have a full final product, in because things are always shifting and changing. But it's the idea that you're trying things out, seeing where it goes. You can also test things out in smaller groups, so within smaller teams, get feedback, see how it works, and then maybe expand it out. Also, if appropriate, like we've talked again, and I want to ask you in a second about microcultures, but I really truly believe that microcultures is almost like the way of the future in a certain sense, in terms of work, because again, like my example from the university, like there's so many different teams and scenarios, and how, again, each team, how they function within the whole picture. And there maybe shouldn't be one policy for every single person on certain issues. Yes, for certain things, of course, but not for everything, right? So we want to ask ourselves, when we have certain policies about working together, is it sparking collaboration? Are people feeling connected, included, supported? These are good questions to just generally ask ourselves as
Mhm.
leaders and as business owners and employers, right? So, we talking about this idea of the microculture, what can leaders do to maximize within their own teams the effectiveness of working together in a hybrid scenario?
Yeah, yeah, and there's quite a few things, and if anybody out there in the audience have any insights in terms of your personal experience on what we have covered so far, please do share. We always want to hear, and as I said, it probably other people can benefit from this as well. And in terms of leadership, there's a lot there are a lot of that leaders can do. And one of the things that you mentioned, Lydia, is, and I really appreciate it, is that the microcultures, leaders drive that, and we need to address that. And we're not going back to normal. That ship has sailed for sure. And leaders need to use this transition as an opportunity to realign and refocus, instead of trying to go back to normal. Because if we're trying to push in the direction where we're not able to go, we're trying to push it back, it's not going to happen. There's a lot of energy that's going to be wasted on that. So if we refocus on realigning and getting back together, then it's going to be more productive. We're all changed as individuals, as teams and organizations in the past 2 years. We're different. Some people are no longer with the company. New people, new employees probably joined, some without even meeting the rest of the team in real life. I have friends who started a new job and they still haven't seen people in person.
Yeah,
The
same.
yeah, the daily
Yeah.
human interactions that are cornerstones of the company culture, and micro team cultures, like you mentioned, also changed. So it's important to take the time to look for the new unwritten rules that exist, new relationships, new habits that are there. It's time to bring them to the surface and take a closer look. How do we connect to each other? Why are we doing things the way we do? How do we work together as a team? The pandemic amplified the importance of doing meaningful work and doing it together. So one of the mindset changes that leaders need to make is to see that as a chance to help employees understand the purpose of their work and bring them closer together, because it's not nice to have anymore. It's absolutely essential. People do consider this as one of the deciding factors. And this is where I come back to the importance of co-creating team guidelines. I go back to it almost in every LinkedIn line,
Yeah,
but it's
I know.
so,
It's so important.
it's so important, right? So it's having those conversations. It's leaders become facilitators of those conversations. That's really important. They don't have to do it all by themselves, but by
Mhm.
guiding the conversation, they help all employees to feel heard and really co-create this experience together. And this is super, super important. So to get everyone involved and contribute, I would also recommend, when it comes to determining the rules for hybrid work, is to send some self-reflection questions in advance, so everyone can have time to think and reflect, and to bring well thought out ideas to the conversation. And some of the questions may be, what are some of the challenges that you foresee for us as a team as we transition to hybrid
Mm.
work model, right? So what can we do as a team to create an environment of trust and collaboration? How can we ensure that we're building and maintaining connections and relationships, and how will we interact with each other? And another shift that needs to happen is that leaders need to recognize that proximity bias is an issue and redefine how they interact with the team. And this may include something as simple as reflecting at the end of the week who they connected to and who they haven't. Look at the projects that are the team is handling. Who do these projects go to? Is it unequal distribution of opportunities? Right, and it's to really make sure that they are involved as leaders in helping employees set and track their goals and progress, so they can have a better understanding of everyone's performance, right? So that's something that we mentioned. And do you have
Mhm.
anything to add, Lydia? I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, like we could talk forever on this topic. We only have a few more minutes, but I actually wanted to just bring up something that I saw on LinkedIn this morning. Actually, it was a comment from a connection that I have who was working in a different time zone than most of her colleagues. So she's working remote somewhere else. So she mentioned how she likes receiving good morning messages, and then how one of her colleagues now schedules messages to be sent out, so she gets it first thing in the morning. So my friend gets a lovely message. Her colleague's still sleeping. She knows her colleague's sleeping, so she knows it's not in real time, but it's still nice to get that message. And I thought it was really thoughtful. And it got me thinking about the conversation I knew we were going to have, and how with the remote work, there's more of a likelihood that there's going to be an increase in colleagues across different time zones, right? Because now we can hire people. They don't
Mhm.
even have to live in the same province as us, right? Which is great. Lots of benefits, but some challenges, such as the proximity bias that you mentioned, and the communication that does happen in person. So I think even just being aware of that as a potential challenge, but it can be addressed, right, by the leaders doing things like chatting with their team about how they're going to work together, and also encouraging staff to use technology in effective ways, like that one, programming little messages to go out,
Mhm.
and simple things like that. Like my friend was so thrilled to be getting this lovely little kind of good morning message. So I
Mhm.
think it's really, like you said, having these conversations. I love the idea of asking the team, like, what do you think? What do you think are going to be some of the challenges? Because the beauty of that is that everyone's coming from their own unique perspective, and their own different ways that they kind of, the lens at which they view their life and their work and how they interact with everybody. And so you're really going to be able to address some of the challenges that you as a leader may not even have been able to foresee if you're just working on it on your own. So I think that's such an important
Mhm.
piece. Again, comes back to that whole communication aspect, and
Yeah.
getting things out in the open. So um there was, okay, we have 2 minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 1 minute, super quick if you can, Alina. I want to talk about this idea of open door policy,
Mhm.
and how does that work in a remote and hybrid environment. So in 1 minute, what's your answer?
Yeah.
No
Yeah. So
pressure.
yeah, the open door policy is a tricky one for having, in hybrid model, but it's really important to go back to the reasons for having the open door policy in the first place. So this is a tool, this is a mechanism to create the open communication that are vertical, right? So to give everybody a voice and feeling heard. So it's really important to it's still possible in hybrid work environment, absolutely, but we need to go back to why we have it in the first place, and to really make it effective, because it can look and it can have a different look and different shape, but we need to keep two things in mind. So one, defining what it means. Whose doors are open? Are there rules around it? The clearer the open door policy is, the more likely it will be used by employees. Clarity is key. So the rules around what can employees, when, how can employees start this conversation? Are there office hours? Is it DMs? Is it emails? What sort of issues and topics can be discussed? What cannot be discussed? And what are the safeguards around the process to ensure that people are not going to get any retaliation for bringing up some issues, right? And the more detailed the rules are, the more they're going to be used, because if there is lack of clarity, people will hesitate, people will delay, and people will just stay silently dissatisfied. And second is just defining the purpose of the open door policy. What are we trying to achieve here? What's our goal? And then reverse engineering that and to say, how can we get to that outcome? So that as fast as I can do this.
Amazing. Super good answer. Well, I really think it's something that is going to be top of mind for people. And again, I love the idea of creating clear sort of guidelines and clarity, and then also coming back to the purpose of what it's for. So we would love, if you're watching the replay, if you're watching us live, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We will absolutely get back to you. And if you're curious about how to work with us, we would love to have a chat with you about how we can support you and your team through this new transition of new world of work.
What a fantastic conversation. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And of course, send us your questions around this topic or any other topic. We're always happy to answer. And it also helps us plan our future LinkedIn Lives, because it's such a pleasure to come in and share some of our insights with you. Thank you so much for joining.
Amazing. Bye, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.